Hey everyone, how's it going today and welcome to another episode. So in today's episode, the story right now, what's going on is that inside of Congress right now, there is a brand new bill that was recently just proposed in order to potentially send out more money inside of our pockets. Now, this bill is a little bit more interesting because it's not necessarily a stimulus bill that will send out checks per se, but what it does is that it's specifically dedicated to anyone that happens to be a worker. So if you are someone that's unemployed right now, admittedly, this bill will not apply to you. With that being said, maybe it's very possible if you are unemployed, you could potentially find a job and then this bill will potentially apply to you because it's dedicated to people that are right now currently in the workforce. How this bill particularly works is that it's essentially a bill called the 32-hour work week bill. And as the title suggests, the way this works is that it's pretty much going to reduce the current standard of a 40-hour work week to become only a 32-hour work week. Now, how does this actually involve putting more money in our pockets? That's the really interesting part that we're going to talk about in just a little bit, so definitely stay tuned and with me right there. But the big idea is that in today's video, what I really want to talk about is pretty much just this bill, the details, what's inside, and then maybe just end with some personal thoughts about it. So even if you have seen another video, now if you haven't seen another video, welcome aboard, you're in the right place. But if you have seen another video about this, then hopefully this will give you a little bit more insight, so something extra to take away from this particular video as well. So with that being said, let's get this video started. But as always, you guys know the same drill: like, comment, subscribe if you guys enjoy updates like this. I am, after all, at the end of the day, summarizing a very complicated long bill and trying to condense this into a 10-minute video. So if you guys enjoy that, maybe consider smashing the like button. It's always greatly appreciated. And with that being said, let's get this video started. So we're going to start by maybe giving a little bit of a background story to how this bill even came to be, so you guys know about what actually led up to this bill. But essentially the background and history really is that back in 1940, so basically about almost over 80 years ago, they approved a bill called the Fair Labor Standards Act, which essentially created the 40-hour work week, where anything above that, companies would be required to pay overtime. Well, what the story behind this is that they found that ever since then, over 80 years later, productivity has increased, technology has grown, we're in an AI boom right now, and people are just very tired. You know, I think that's very fair to say. Thus, it should be reduced to 32 hours based off of this logic, with a 3-day weekend instead. So the story is that people in many jobs, now notice I did not say all jobs, just many jobs, can now make the same amount of money working only 32 hours per week under this bill, which basically creates it so that now the work week will shorten from 40 hours to 32 hours while keeping the same amount of pay, which is going to in turn put more money in our pockets. And again, stay tuned because we're going to talk about how you can get more money in your pocket in just a little bit. But the idea is that it's going to reduce the work week from 40 hours to 32 hours while keeping the same amount of pay. But additionally, that extra 8 hours that they save now, it's going to turn into an extra weekend day. So now the weekends will become 3 days instead of 5 days, or instead of 2 days, which is what it currently is at right now at this current particular time. Now comes the really exciting part in terms of how does this actually apply to us, or what this means in terms of how can we potentially receive more money. Well, the big idea really behind this is that because at the very end of the day, as we all know, time is, money, because at the end of the day, you can always get more money, but time is one of the most valuable assets that no matter what you do, you can almost never get more time. You obviously can buy conveniences, like you can buy faster transportation, but at the end of the day, once you age forward, you can never age backwards, no matter how much money you have. That's just kind of a set rule of life. So how this is related to what we're talking about is that essentially what it's going to do is that it's going to reduce the work week from 40 hours to 32 hours while keeping the same amount of pay. What this really means is that essentially although you will be making the same amount of money under the same exact job, your actual hourly rate now will actually go up even further because you can accomplish the same amount of pay working less hours. So instead of working, let's say for I can't do the math right now, but essentially what it is that instead of maybe getting paid $30 per hour under your current job, under this new bill, because you can now make more money or make the same amount of money under less time, your actual hourly wage will go above that $30 per hour to something even greater. But how does this actually involve putting even more money in our pockets? Is that essentially because you are able to save an extra day right now and work 4 days instead of 5 days, what this really means is that if you are someone that really, really values your work-life balance, you can have that now. You can literally just decide that you just want to work 32 hours and then use the rest of the time and instead just dedicate it to your own personal pleasures, whatever the heart desires, family, friends, travel, hobbies, side hustles, whatever that means, whatever's important to your heart. That's the big idea. But however, if you are someone that's trying to chase out after trying to make more money, what this really, really means is that now that you have an extra 8 hours 8 hours every single week to yourself, what this will mean is that now you have extra time to potentially pursue a second job. You can potentially take up a side hustle. You can start a business on the side. You can pick up some kind of side income of some kind. And the idea really is that you now have that extra time to work an additional job. So if you wanted to actually work the standard 40 hours per week, you can now pick up 2 different jobs and achieve that, which means you're getting more money for the same amount of work. What this also means is that additionally, what this also really significant about this is that it also makes it so that overtime pay, instead of starting at 40 hours per week, which is what it currently is at, actually now would start at 32 hours per week. So if you wanted to ideally work a standard 40 hours per week, you still can very, very much do that. In fact, if anything, because you're getting overtime now starting at 32 hours, that extra 8 hours that you're now able to work, or just that extra 8 hours that you're able to work, you now are going to potentially be able to receive more money. Now, how much money? This really depends so much on your current hourly wage, but the idea is that you're going to get more money in your pockets, and potentially quite significantly if you are someone that's working a job with really, really great hourly wage. That's really the biggest takeaway, at least in terms of the side related to putting more money inside of our pockets. Now, what's really, really cool about this is that there actually have already been several places around the world that have already tried to implement this. I believe there's a part of Massachusetts that tried to implement this. I wrote a couple notes on the side, but essentially there are parts of Massachusetts that have attempted to kind of just small, not the whole state, but just a small community inside. I believe in Maryland, in the UK, in Valencia, Spain, those are the places where they tried to implement this particular kind of reduced amount of work hours per work week. But in terms of how successful has it really, really become, I think that really the idea really is that, because it is a little bit subjective, because there are some pros and there are some cons to this, and we're going to share my personal thoughts in a little bit. But the idea really is that the success has really just varied. It really, really depends on it also really, really depends, interestingly, on the person's actual occupation, because certain occupations, it's going to be relatively difficult to implement such a policy. More on that in a little bit, so definitely stay tuned. If you guys are still with me, thank you guys so much for still being here with me. And the idea really is that, maybe to move on to some personal thoughts about it, is that I think at the end of the day, I personally support this, but at the end of the day, it is a little bit biased, because let's be very, very honest. Most of us here probably do want more money in our pockets. Most of us here do want to be able to, work less and achieve the same amount of results. I think that's a very, very fair statement to make. However, my personal thoughts about it is that although I do support this, and feel free to share your particular thoughts about whether or not you support this bill as well, while it is true that I do support it, I do admittedly think it's going to be relatively difficult to approve inside of Congress. The biggest reason why is that because there are many different kinds of jobs that might actually be able to achieve this efficient result, but there's also a lot of jobs where you basically have to be there for the standard 40 hours a week. So examples of this would be like a teacher. If you are a teacher, you have to potentially teach 5 days a week unless you also reduce the education system to 4 days. And if you reduce the education system to 4 days per week, then you're kind of weakening the education system at the same time. Similarly, there's also other kinds of jobs such as like security guards. You kind of have to be on duty. Doormen have to be there. Mailmen, they have to kind of work, those hours per week just because they have to physically be there. There's no way to be efficient when you're working a job that involves presence. That's the biggest idea. So because of that reason, I do support this bill. However, with that being said, I think logistically, it would be really, really difficult to implement. Of course, we obviously never know because there already have been several places around the world that have implemented this with varying success. So you never really know, but those are just some of my personal thoughts behind this. The other big thing about it, and I think this is the part that not a lot of people are really talking about, is that because if they decide to implement this particular new program to reduce the work week from 40 to 32 hours, for those particular jobs, keep in mind is that it doesn't mean that companies can only force you to work up to 32 hours. What it really means is that it means that overtime would start at 32 hours and that the norm would become 32 hours. So it's very possible that you can still be a teacher. You can still be a security guard, you can still be a doorman or a mailman and still work 40 hours per week. But what it does mean is that you would potentially be able to now receive even more money because, again, keep in mind, we just mentioned is that your hourly wage would go up. However, one of the biggest points is that it also means that because of all of the stuff that I just mentioned, it means that wages are going to go up. And what this means is that it's going to be more expensive to hire workers. So why this is related is that because right now at this current time in history, we are experiencing record inflation. It obviously is a lot better than what it was 2 years ago. Right now, speaking in 2024, it's a lot better than what happened in 2022 when we saw inflation skyrocket, the stock market was tanking, everything was struggling, things were getting so expensive, groceries, bills, real estate, housing, everything along that line. But the idea is that if they start to increase wages, it would make it so that it would be more expensive to hire workers. That could potentially take it so that it means that because it's more expensive to hire workers, a lot of companies might start to now physically hire less workers, and that could potentially impact the unemployment rate. That could potentially impact inflation because, again, things are going to be a lot more expensive, and there's just going to be a lot of just indirect things that could happen that I don't think a lot of people are talking about, that I think is really important to bring up about how this could potentially impact our economy. But of course, what they end up doing, all of this stuff, we just have to see in one of the future episodes of The Kevin Show. So the idea behind it is that feel free to share your personal thoughts about it. If you guys made it to the end, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well. Remember to smash the like button if you guys haven't done so, or leave a comment for a suggestion if you guys want to. Subscribe, hit the bell, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.